Eventually, we're into our third hour.
Mm-hmm.
Lot to talk about, lot to review. We kind of left off with you and Mom getting married and kind of how that all come about. So now you guys find yourselves. Where were you living initially when you got married?
Wabash.
Wabash.
Mm-hmm.
You're working at the Wabash Donut Shop.
Right.
At what point did we move to Gas City? Because that's the earliest home that I remember.
Okay. Well, there's Mom. The Wabash Donut Shop. We were working in that, and then I went to work at Dunkin' Donuts back in Marion, but we still stayed in Wabash.
You still live in Wabash.
And then I started working at Dunkin' Donuts for Gary Bone.
Mm-hmm.
And Mom was pregnant at that time. So
with Josh.
So she was sleeping on the flour sacks at nighttime when I was working thirds because I didn't want to leave her in Wabash by herself.
Okay. Was she working with you, or was she just coming in to keep you company?
Yeah. Well, virtually it's because of me. I didn't want to leave her back there. And of course, you didn't have cell phones and stuff like that. Nothing. Mm-hmm. She's this big pregnant gal. And Gary Bone says, "Hey, I know somebody's got a trailer for sale. Are you interested?" And I says, "I don't know." He said, "Man, he's going to make you a good deal. Anybody a good deal if you want it."
Mm-hmm.
And so we bought a trailer that was 65 foot long, 14 foot wide, 3-bedroom for $600 cash.
Where was it at?
It was at Stonecrest Trailer Court in Marion.
Okay.
And we bought that and paid cash for it.
How'd you pay cash for it?
Your mom had some money.
How'd you get a wad of cash, or kind of inherited?
Her grandparents had put money back in CDs
for
them all their birthdays. And she had that.
She just had the money sitting there to get her a new trailer.
Well,
how much you pay for it?
$600.
Oh, well, that's not that.
Well, back that time,
I know that's a lot of money back then. But. All right, so you guys buy a trailer for $600, and it was up in Marion.
Stonecrest Trailer Court.
So could Mom get off the flour bags and stay there? That was acceptable.
Could stay there. Yeah. Sometimes she drove me into work, and sometimes I took the car.
Yeah.
We were just but you're only 15 minutes apart at that point, you know.
And so Josh was born while you guys were working at the donut store.
Yes, but he was born in Wabash.
In Wabash. Why didn't he get born in Marion?
Because we were still in Wabash at that point.
Oh, okay. So he got born, then you guys bought the trailer and moved into the trailer.
Yeah, I was working in Marion, but we still stayed in Wabash.
And Josh is born
in Wabash.
You guys find a trailer to move. And this whole time, are you guys still going to Adams Street?
Yeah, church? We always did.
Okay. Yeah. And Grandma and Grandpa was still there, obviously. Yeah. How long did Grandpa end up preaching his entirety?
Almost 40 years there.
At that church. All right, so Josh is born. At some point, the decision's made within the next couple of years to go to Florida.
Not quite.
Well, Angie's 2 years younger than Josh.
But so a tornado goes through and lifts the trailer up and sets it back down while we're in it. And
you felt that?
Oh, yeah. It scared us, you know. And the Stonecrest is on a hill. And now if I would have been wise, I would have went and bought me a piece of property and moved the trailer there. But I wasn't. And so we put the trailer up for sale. Gary Bone's brother is a realtor, Tom Bone. He put the trailer up for sale, sold it for $1,600, and we bought a Gas City house for $16,000.
Okay.
That is where we lived for about 6 months.
Okay.
And then I got hepatitis. And then Mom got hepatitis. And I lost my job at the donut shop. I was sick for over a month with hepatitis. And Josh was about 2 years and a half.
Josh probably had to go stay with Grandma and Grandpa.
Yeah. And that's when Steve's big time of letting him drink wine.
You let Josh drink wine?
Yeah. That was a little story that got out later. But Grandma and Grandpa Galling, not McKnight.
Right. So Josh went to go live with them. So they weren't divorced yet.
Well, you said grandma and grandpa. I don't know. I think maybe.
Was it Grandpa and Barbara?
No, Barbara come in much later in that situation.
So did he just move in with Grandma Pat?
Grandma Pat, Steve, and Susie. I think that's where.
Okay.
I don't think they were still together.
Okay.
When we moved to that Gas City home, I think they had already.
They had separated.
Well, like I said, that was pretty quick on after we got married.
Yeah. Okay. So he lived with for that month with Grandma. And
Yeah, it's
Susie.
probably a couple weeks he was actually there, but we were sick for over a month.
Yeah.
With hepatitis.
But Uncle Steve gave him some wine.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
Does Josh remember it?
I don't
or
know.
Was that
Josh,
just a story?
No, yeah,
Uncle,
he'd be 2.5.
Right. So it's just a story Uncle Steve.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you can't get over your sickness,
mm-hmm.
and you're there at the Gas City house.
Mm-hmm.
You lose your job
at Dunkin' Donuts.
So you get over your sickness. Now what?
I'm going to go back to work in Wabash for what is the family bakery, but Dave wanted to take us on a vacation.
Uncle Dave?
No, Dave Going.
Oh, okay.
And they were divorced at that time because Pat didn't go.
Mm-hmm.
And we went down and visited Naples, where Grandpa and Grandpa, Harry and Joanne was.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went over to the East Coast where Gracie was. And visited there, and Daddy Jack. Daddy Jack was still alive. And so
Jupiter, Florida?
Yeah. And so we went into one of the Publix grocery store, and they had a bakery. And I just kind of talked around and put an application in.
Was that planned? Were you guys planning to move down there?
Nope. We was going to go back.
But you're in between jobs. I
was going to go back and work for Wabash.
So what attracted you to Florida? Why'd you want to?
Oh, that bakery was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was a real full-line bakery.
Was Mom on board with it, or was she a little hesitant?
Well, she wasn't no hesitation. It was more of a flippant idea to fill that application out than it was serious,
Yeah. And then you come back and they call you, or what?
We come back and the donut shop is closed in Wabash.
Oh. So now you ain't now
I don't have a job.
That kind of answers the.
And I can't get a job back at Dunkin' Donuts because he had to hire somebody to replace me. And then they called from North Palm Beach.
And you guys moved south.
They said, "Are you interested in this job, really?" And they needed a donut man, so I just happened to be in the
donut business. So you guys load up. Little Josh, was Mom pregnant with Angie yet, or no?
Yes.
Okay. And you guys head south.
We sold the house.
Was the family all good with that? Your parents, everybody was kind of like, "Where?"
Mick moved us. Mick took us in his truck and a trailer, and
really?
We drove our car, and Uncle Russ went in his car because he was moving down to Naples too. So we took a 3-vehicle caravan, but we moved in with Dick and Gracie. We didn't have an apartment
initially.
We didn't have an apartment yet.
How long did you live with them before you?
A couple weeks.
Okay.
We were looking really hard, but we needed to get our job started. Needed to get some money.
Where did Mom start working, or was she just at home?
Nope, she was at home.
At home taking care of Josh. So
and pregnant at that point.
That's really where. So when you were a kid, you weren't into fishing, but it was during that time that you went back as a young married couple that you got into fishing.
I got into fishing up in Wabash.
I know, but I've always heard about Florida fishing from you. But it was during not your childhood days. No. It was during these days.
Saltwater became my love for fishing.
Yeah, and you tell a story that you were down at the little catwalk at the little piers under the bridges, and you caught a big snook or something, and someone bought it off of you.
Well, yeah, I was on my way to work at 5 o'clock in the morning.
And you decided to go fishing.
I learned, when I was riding my bicycle, and one day I'm coming there, it's at 5 o'clock in the morning is when I had to be in, so it's, before 5, and a boat comes and they lift up the bridge and all the ding, ding, dings and lights and everything, and about that time the whole world come unglued underneath there, fish hitting the shrimp that were coming up to the light, and it was like, so... I told my boss about it. And he said, well, that's probably snook. He said, you probably ought to, this bait, this bat, that bait, that. And so I go buy me, all I have is a little bass pole.
Mm-hmm.
And I go buy me the 2 lures he said I would need. And I leave about a half hour early for work. And I crawled down underneath there. I wasn't on the catwalk yet, but I crawled down underneath that bridge. And there was one little light on, and I cast in there, and I got me a nice snook, which I didn't know what a snook was.
Yeah.
And I got him in, and I
went on into work.
Well, it happened and then I got another one on, and he broke me off. So then I have one more lure.
Mm-hmm.
So I tie him on real quick, and I go to cast, and it wraps around the power line.
So excited.
It all went to pieces at that point. But I had this fish like this, which I didn't know was a snook.
Yeah.
And when I got there, I knocked on the door, and they come to the back, and I asked Mr. Williams if I could bring this fish and put it in the cooler.
Uh-huh.
And he said, well, that's a snook. I said, well, okay. I didn't know what a snook was.
Yeah.
And Donnie, the assistant manager, said, you want to sell that?
Yes.
Well, it's just a fish for me. And I think he gave me $15 for it.
Nice. Did you ever catch any more and sell them?
Not right then.
You did later, though?
I did later, but not sell it.
Yeah. But you went back.
It's illegal to sell them. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Did they have all the restrictions on them like they do now?
Not as much, but you can't sell a game fish.
Okay. But
like you can't sell deer.
Right.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay. Yeah. When you guys moved back down there, did you find a local church, or what was your?
We did find a church in Jupiter, Florida. Turned out to be a really nice church. We got we even still have friends today from that church.
Yeah, I remember. What were their names?
Daniels.
Yes.
And the Dykes.
Mm-hmm. You met all them at that church?
At that one church.
So it was, who was more or less the spiritual leader at that point in the family?
I would say it's me, although I struggled more than your mom did. I would say I still know enough to know.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a couple really good services, and she's the one who made her own commitment about jewelry. I didn't. That wasn't nothing I said or did, and then later I was sanctified there, and but come to find out, I didn't really know what I was talking about. So.
At any point, did you ever feel God was calling you to the ministry at this stage?
No.
Didn't have any desire to kind of follow in your dad's footsteps?
Well, I can't say I didn't have a desire, but that was no calling that I had.
Yeah.
No.
You were going to church more because that's what you knew.
That's what we did, and I think out of respect for Dad.
Come back home. How long were you down there?
A year and a half.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So a year and a half on the Florida experience. Did you have a job waiting here for you when you come back, or
no? We were coming back with the idea that I may open a bakery again up here.
Okay.
Yeah.
But all your family support was still up here.
Mm-hmm.
So when you guys moved back with Josh and Angie, where were you?
We stayed at Mom and Dad's for about a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tim and Rose was moving out of their house in Fairmount. And it was going to be open for rent. It wasn't their house, but it was going to be open for rent. And we moved into theirs while they moved to another house.
And how old were you guys?
I'd be about 25, 24.
Okay. And it was when you moved to Fairmount that Uncle Tim coerced you into becoming a
He was
deputy?
a police officer, and so was Tim Glass there. Tim Glass was the chief there.
Okay. So your friend, did you know Tim Glass before that time?
No.
Okay. So you move over to Fairmount, just getting back from Florida. Tim Glass was the chief, and he hired Uncle Tim.
Right.
And then did they come to you, or did you go to them and say, hey, I'm interested in law enforcement? Or
there was a little bit of that, and you can become a reserve, and
which
so I become a reserve. And they don't pay you, but you get to ride around in a police car,
Play cops and robbers.
Play cops and robbers.
So when did you commit how long were you a reserve before you committed to being a full-time officer?
About a year.
About a year as a reservist.
And they needed a police officer and somebody.
They were ready to hire full-time.
Yeah.
And Uncle Tim was full-time.
Uncle Tim was now the chief.
Okay, so Tim Glass stepped down
to be assistant, and Tim became the chief.
And Tim how long did you work as a full-time officer
before
you went to the academy?
You had 1 year before you had to go to the academy. And at that time, they didn't have to send me to the full academy, just the marshal's academy, marshal. But they sent me. Now, when I say they sent me, they didn't pay me. They just sponsored me so I could go to the academy for free.
But they didn't pay you a salary?
They didn't pay me a salary.
How'd you guys make money during that?
I come home and work Saturday and Sunday.
That's it?
And we run the trash route on Saturday. But I had to hire somebody to run the trash route while I was gone because we owned the trash company.
What was Mom doing? Just
babysitting.
Mom.
You become born there.
Yeah, in Fairmount.
At that house. Yeah.
And you worked in Fairmount for how long?
2 years.
What? Just obviously Fairmount's a small town. You probably don't see a lot of major crime. But what would be? What would you think during your time there in Fairmount was the number one crime, or what was it? What did it entail? What did it involve? Was it domestic? Was it alcohol related?
Alcohol related things happen quite frequently.
Mm-hmm.
The number one crime was a neighbor to another neighbor got caught in her house, and he beat her trying to kill her. Thought he left her for dead.
Oh, really?
And she wasn't dead. And when they got her, she said who it was.
So he was burglarizing her house?
Yeah.
He kind of got caught in the act? Got caught. Oof. Who investigated that one? The state police come in, probably?
Tim and Tim Glass. Whether state police come in on that, I don't remember that. But it was a neighbor.
Yeah. In a small town. When you go off to the academy, when you graduated the academy, how long did you stay in Fairmount?
Well, Tim had moved to Warren as town marshal there.
Okay.
And I come back to work for Gary, whoever was now the town marshal.
There in Fairmount. Okay.
And then he changed. Another town marshal come in, which I didn't really care for at all. And then Tim needed a deputy up there.
So that's what ultimately drew us to
Warren. Well, we went to Gas City.
Right.
Why I still was at
Fairmount. And then we ended up going up to Warren.
And then, And Tim was quitting, and he was going to leave, and that position was opening. And
the town marshal position. So you weren't a deputy in Warren. You walked straight into town marshal.
I worked part-time for Tim.
Okay.
And then
so they knew you.
Yeah.
They knew you, that kind of thing. So then you come into Warren as the new town marshal. We all moved up to that old country home.
And about a mile and a half out of town.
And you were ultimately a police officer in Warren for how long?
8 years.
8 years in Warren as town marshal.
Then
we moved to the Jones house, the big white one with the widow's weep. Any major crime that you investigated there in Warren, or was it pretty similar related crime like in Fairmount? I know you had that one big vehicle pursuit.
I had that.
I know you and Tim, or you and one of your deputies, got into a lot of drugs out on the interstate.
Tim Glass got into that.
And Tim Glass came to work for you, right? As a deputy?
Yeah.
So you guys stayed together pretty much for most of your career.
We back and forth, yeah. We did.
Bouncing around.
Yeah. I had a couple of suicides that we did. And then I had a major robbery going on that I caught the guys in the middle of it.
In the act?
Yeah. It was at nighttime, and somebody said, hey, there's a suspicious truck down here by the telephone company. And so I was the only one. I come down there and I pull up, and there's a truck sitting there already rolled one of these big 5-ton rolls of copper on the back of his truck.
Loading it up, so they're burglarizing.
And apparently they see me coming and they took off. And I sat there with my lights on, and I kept thinking, their truck's here. They're got to be here. So I'm calling, waiting on backup. And about that time, I see somebody crawling through the grass.
Mm-hmm.
And so I jump out with my gun, and I stop him, and I arrest him. And then the sheriff pulls up, or deputy pulls up.
Mm-hmm.
And he went ahead and took him in. And I knew there was another guy, so I started looking for him. And I found him out on State Road 3.
Just walking by himself, probably trying to hitchhike.
Yeah,
get the heck out of there.
He was out there in the middle of, 3 o'clock in the morning. Did he
run from you or fight you or anything?
He didn't. I pulled a gun on him, though.
Yeah.
Because, at this point, I don't know what kind of criminal he is.
Felon.
That he's definitely doing something that, was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And took him in. I did that.
Did you ever get involved in any use of force issues where you had to fight people? And
I had fought one guy. I got a call of a man walking in the middle of the road, and when I pulled out, there's on State Road 218.
Mm-hmm.
He's walking in the middle of the road, and like, so hey, bud, get out of the road, get out of the road,
mm-hmm.
and he won't get out of the road. So I pull up in front of him and get out and come back at him. And he wanted to fight, so we started fighting, and I got him in a good hold, but we ended up on the ground and in the ditch.
Mm-hmm.
And a car come by and pulled over and says, "Can I help you?" I says, "Get me that radio in my car, tell him I need assistance," because I got the guy, I'm holding him still, but he's wiggling like a worm, and he's, he wanted to commit suicide is what it ultimately was.
Mm.
And so they said, "But they're looking for you, but they don't know where you're at." I says, "I'm on 218 East of Moore." And he said, "Oh, we thought you was West." So that was the state trooper was
able to come back in.
Yeah. But
I know is during those years that it sparked my interest for law enforcement. 'Cause I remember riding in the car with you, and you were always in a uniform, even though you were coaching our little league. I just always remember that police presence was always there, which definitely sparked an interest. And all this time, you guys are going to Adams Street Church.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I grew up, going to church. Were you ever involved with any ministry at Adams Street before you eventually became the pastor? Like, did you and Mom teach Sunday school? I know you helped out Grandma with the school, but that was more.
That was a very little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And Mom and I did the youth group for a little bit, not for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But not really involved in the actual part of the ministry.
Mm-hmm. Was it just a lifetime of decisions of not fully committing to God, or what was leading up to that? Like, what was it, a progressive thing, or was it just? Well, I think God called you out on some things, and you just finally had to make a decision.
Well, I come into the, you could, "Oh God, I'm sorry," and then you go on, "Oh God, I'm sorry. Oh God, I'm sorry," and then I did that all the way up until, there was some, like down in Florida, with some issues that really happened, and I didn't want nothing more. I didn't even want to get a chance to get in that again. Tried my best to stay away from it, but there's no staying away from it. It's everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And it just kept building up till finally, God said, "You're going to have to confess this to your wife if you want me to forgive you." And that was like, "Oh, no, I don't." Mm-hmm. "Oh, yes, you do." "Oh, no, I don't." And then finally that became an issue where I wrestled with it till I finally talked to your mom. And she, at that point, and I'm leaving a lot of things out, but not intentionally, but just to be careful, said, "Well, I haven't loved you for a long time. I've been afraid of you because I had a temper, a real bad temper."
You did?
Mm-hmm. I was more of afraid of me at that point, she said. So I don't know.
What do you think led to the bad temper?
I think just having knowing what's right, and then being tempted into pornography and different things, and then being tempted this, and then knowing what's right, and just back and forth.
So you didn't have any kind of peace?
Well, I come to a place where there was no peace.
Mm-hmm.
And there was definitely going to be an issue. Something was going to happen, and I wasn't really sure what.
So just, I mean, because from my perspective as a kid, I don't remember. I was young. I don't remember any of those struggles. Like I remember you coaching Little League. I remember we always grew up in church, but there was obviously a lot more things going on behind the scenes with your and mom's marriage, and that's probably pretty typical. Parents will try to keep, protect their kids from it. So at the point where you no longer have peace in your life, like it's complete chaos, crossroads, you were still a police officer, still working the streets, still going to church, still playing the part, but internally there was an inner battle going on, spiritual battle.
Yeah, I actually ended up taking leave from, well, that comes just a little later, but had a real serious talk with your mom. That really stirred up a lot of things, but it also revealed some things. And but I couldn't. It wouldn't stop now. The snowball of all the things that I just let go. That now I'm faced with something that's mentally crushing me.
What was mentally crushing you? Was it just the constant battle, or was it
really guilt? Just
the guilt of all of it
piling up now.
Okay.
And the answers were coming like, well, kill yourself. That take care of it, stuff like that. But then many of these thoughts were just coming. How many things did I see in law enforcement that were horrible and evil? And how many stories did I hear? Many stories, many of the things that I'd seen, the suicides and everything just started. Everything was just
started festering.
Everything was coming alive, and I couldn't control the thoughts.
So what was the defining point where you knew it had to be God? There's the only one that could save you.
That's where the story comes in from Isaiah 9:6. I had come home. I was on duty. I come home. Nobody's there. I'm not sure if that's the day that your mom left with you guys. I'm not sure. There was a time that actually happened, and I'd walked in the house, and I think I was going to either. I don't know. I don't want to say suicide, but I was going to end this thing. And but I grabbed the Bible on the way out, and I went back to the back pasture field behind the Jones farm, and I got back where I was completely secluded, which is, I hit my knees. I know I did, and I don't remember opening the Bible, but I must have. And I began to pray, and I wasn't giving God the ultimatum, but I knew that if God didn't do something, I was in trouble. It was just one of those things. And
was the thought process is I'm not leaving here today without either
I
I'm
probably
dead
wasn't going to go back to the house one way or another. And it wasn't to threaten God. That's just I couldn't go back. I mean, I couldn't go back in the police car. I couldn't go back into the. It wasn't stopping now. I mean, there was a real issue there that I couldn't stop a lot of the thoughts that were just awful, evil thoughts.
Do you remember specifically what you prayed for?
Forgiveness. I was praying for forgiveness. And I couldn't get God to say, okay, you're forgiven. And I couldn't no more say, okay, I'm forgiven.
So you didn't feel forgiven. You're just going through the motions of saying it.
The piling up was getting of the guilt, and everything was getting. It was past that point. I could no longer deal with it. But as I was praying, an abnormal wind began to blow. I heard it, I noticed it, but I wasn't thinking about it. I was praying, and I heard the Bible pages flipping. So I must have opened the Bible. I did. don't remember doing that. And that abnormal wind began to blow and the pages were flipping. And it stopped just as abnormal as it was began to blow. And I opened my eyes, and of course the Bible was open, and I put my finger down on the Bible, but it's upside down, which is how I always open a book upside down. I lay it down upside down. It's just the way it is. And I turn it around, and it's right on Isaiah 9:6. And I couldn't have told you where that verse was in the Bible.
Yeah, it probably never heard of it before.
I may have heard of it, but I couldn't have told you where it was at or what it was, the context.
Did you put your finger down with the purpose of looking for an answer?
I did. I knew that God, I need an answer. And I didn't know what page, what book, I didn't know what was there.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it was upside down even. So it was even something. Well, when I read it, Isaiah 9:6, it said, "For unto us a child is born, unto a son is given." And when I got to the word given, God asked me, "Well, why do you think I would give you my son?" And I said, "For forgiveness." And he said, "You're forgiven."
Did you have to read any further, or was that?
No, that was all I read. Well, I mean the full verse, but in his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father.
So it was the word given that really stood out to you.
Right.
So what, growing up in church, we all know John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave. So why did the given part stand out to you, think, so much now? Was it because you were just so adamantly seeking for it, or why did that click?
I don't know if I could give a good explanation other than it seemed like God wasn't forgiving me. And it seemed like the thoughts of the best thing to do is end your life. The best thing is quit. The best thing is walk away from it. The best thing, all them best things was don't deal with this anymore. But they were, instead of them being an answer, they were just more turmoil. They were just more torturous.
More confusion.
Yeah, causing more confusion. And then when the word given was there, why would I give somebody something? Why would God give it to? I want them to have it.
So it was a gift. It was something that's freely given.
And I want you to have it. That's how I took it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'll take it. Well, then began, now I ended up in the hospital after that, if you remember that. But then began a different journey with me knowing this is my anchor.
Yeah. Because I think there's a conception that once you ask for forgiveness, the battle's over. Does that make sense? And it's a constant. You, just like you have to always constantly work on your marriage, I have to work on my relationship with God. And I think for example, my daughter, she got baptized. She thought, well, that's done. I'm not going to have a struggle anymore. No. That's, but she's finding out, no, the devil is still out to seek and devour. It's just a constant progression of walking in faith.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things I remember to some degree is, but I told God that I've never been able to successfully do this.
Yeah, because you've asked for forgiveness before.
Hundreds of times.
Right. And you've received it.
And I even thought I was sanctified once, which I was told once you're sanctified, you no longer have a desire for sin.
Yeah.
But that's not true.
It's not true.
That's a false doctrine that is twisted. To take it this way, it's like speaking in tongues, and then now you no longer have a problem. No. And I don't believe in speaking in tongues, but the idea that once you're settled, it's over. No, it wasn't. Now I have to learn to walk.
Now you've got to learn how to live
and obey
in Christ. Trust and obey.
Right.
Yeah, it's powerful. So it wasn't an easy road after that
Absolutely
point.
not.
But when you went back to the house, I mean, you left with the promise that the gift has been given, right?
Right.
The Son of God has been given for you.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you continue to apply it to your life? How did you initially apply it? I assume all the problems didn't go away.
Oh no, but and I don't know when Mom come home, but I sat her down and I went over a lot of things again, or more things, I should say. And she said, "Look, I've forgiven you. You don't have to tell me no more."
Yeah.
Which there was a bunch of garbage still,
Sure.
and I don't know if I guess for her that was the answer, but I don't know. But for me, okay, and then I took some steps to just start reading the Bible, start following the things, and then I ran into a really bad mental storm.
Was it just because from confusion?
Some confusion, some doctrinal confusion, some, but I could always go back to Isaiah 9:6 as my anchor to hold me. And then that's when I took 6 weeks of work off, because that storm was, I had to deal with this.
Mm-hmm. Were you spiritually at peace during that time, knowing that you're doing you're doing your best?
I knew I was forgiven, but there's some restitutions that had to be made. There was some open confessions that had to be made to the people, different people.
Mm-hmm.
And you won't believe, and not say you personally, but how many things you just let slide and just let slide and let slide. And now all of a sudden, it's just like the story I told you. Now all of a sudden, Sean and Mr. Wild shows up 40 years later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Think people in your past,
mm-hmm.
That shows up all of a sudden.
So I know that you got put on some medication, was receiving counseling for more or less a mental breakdown.
That's what they said. Mm-hmm. Chemical imbalance is what
chemical imbalance, and that was their way to describe just the internal spiritual battle that you were going through.
Yeah, they didn't have no way of understanding or explaining it as a spiritual issue. They tried to do it with all physical.
So you were on Prozac for a while.
Mm-hmm. It was a new drug at the time.
Yeah. What led to you getting off of that, or what was?
There was a couple of drugs I was on medications. One for sleep and one and Prozac was the other one. And I had taken Prozac from that time, and I'm going to say 3 or 4 months, and we ended up going to Bahamas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my dad asked us to, and I'm just trying to be obedient to God. And we ended up down in the Bahamas in the ghettos, and one night a very oppressive spirit came over me of what was being said up the stairs, and it was so oppressive I couldn't. I had to get out of the room, and when I went down to the downstairs by myself, it was on me again, tremendously oppression on me, and it was what they were saying. I know what it was, but I couldn't stop the hearing of what they were saying, and I was actually going to go take some more Prozac. And it may have overdosed me, I don't know. But I got to stop this now.
Yeah.
And I hadn't had that happen since the hospital thing. But this was definitely on me. I couldn't stop it. It was, and I didn't go to anybody. I just went down there. And just as I was getting ready to take more Prozac, God said, "Are you going to trust me, or are you going to trust your Prozac?" And because he had dealt with me on them other things, I knew it was God speaking to me. Wasn't me just coming up with a thought in my head.
Right.
I said, "I'm going to trust you." We'll put the bottle down. And I didn't take another one from that time on. And they said I'd be on that the rest of my life.
So how do you overcome that oppressed spirit? Or how did you do it then? Just by trusting in God? Well,
I had my foundation, Isaiah 9:6. And then I have been obedient. I had not willfully sinned against God since.
Mm-hmm.
Although many of the battles came.
Sure.
You know, it's like if you're giving up drugs, if you're giving up alcohol, if you're giving up tobacco, you're going to have that
Urge.
them battles, them urges, and where
Mhm.
you have to stand and fight. And I did
During
that. I did that on
your initial conversion or salvation, you made a commitment. You said it a little bit earlier that whatever you got to do, you'll do
I do it. Mhm.
for God.
Mhm.
And that happened in the basement of the church. Is that when that prayer kind of come about? Even if you want me to be a janitor or
Right. That
clean the
was.
toilets, whatever you want from me, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the obedience came from. And you felt led to the mission field at what point? Like, because I know we went to Bahamas quite a bit.
Because Dad asked me, and I told him no.
Oh,
And when I got home, I found out it wasn't Dad asking me.
yeah.
You know,
You felt
I thought, whoa, something's happening. What happened? What did I do wrong?
Yeah.
Because I've been trying really careful to keep my mind. I have Ephesians 9:6. Think on these things.
Mhm.
Don't let your thoughts get out of hand. Make sure every thought is brought through the subject, the scripture. I was really working on that and now all of a sudden I'm dealing with something I didn't know what I was dealing with. I thought, but I'm not ready to leave the country. I'm not ready to go travel. I was still on all this medication and God said He'd ask, well, your dad didn't ask you, I'd ask you. So that was where I had to make a flip flop there and say, okay, well, we'll go.
Yeah.
But I was really afraid, and I was afraid. I still was afraid, even that to that point where I dealt with this issue. But the very time I was dealing with that issue down in this classroom of Bahamas was when your mom was talking to Myrna about becoming a missionary and becoming a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
And if I would have not have followed God on that one,
Mom may not have got her calling.
The battle was on me to be obedient. And if I'm going to be obedient, then God's going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And He was doing that simultaneously, which I did not know.
Yeah. You don't put those pieces together till later that it was your obedience to go to Bahamas and your grandpa or your dad leading you to ask, God leading him to ask you. It was all for Mom.
It was all for that door to open.
Yeah.
But it's also for me learning to be obedient on things that I wasn't.
That shouldn't.
I
never.
wouldn't go into Bahamas. I said no. I have no desire. Well,
yeah.
It's because one of them, I didn't want around anything to do with Bahama, Paradise Island, none of that stuff. You know.
Yeah.
Because I'd already had some of that deal with Florida. I don't want around it. You know.
Yeah, and
But I had no idea we was going to be in the ghetto either.
Well, we were right in the ghetto. I remember that much.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. So there's probably 3 more hours that we could talk about how the ministry sparked off, and how God led you to God's Bible school, and that's a whole nother.
Yeah, we haven't got back to being resigning from the police department and getting fired from the church and going in the trash truck. All 3 at the same time.
All 3 at the same time. So during the Bahamas calling, you felt led into ministry at some point. When did you feel led into ministry? Was that?
Well, your mom was going to school to be a nurse, and we took the church.
In Linwood.
How
did that connection come about?
Dad was president of the conference.
That church was a Christian New Life?
Yeah, it was a Christian New Life.
Oh, I didn't know that. I never put those pieces together.
Yeah.
And they were in need of a preacher.
Pastor.
And what did Grandpa recommend you?
He asked me if I'd take it.
You're in the process of being
already told.
Have you ever preached up until that point?
I'd already, but see, I told God whatever He asked me to do, I would do. And a lot of the things I would say come from just that statement. Not because I thought I could do it, but I know if He's asking me to do it, it's a way. It's got to be a way. Yeah.
And that led to your first church, which was Linwood, Indiana.
Yeah, I was town marshal. We owned a trash company, and we was pastor at Linwood. And your mom
was going to nursing school.
Going to nursing school, and we just took in 2 more foster kids.
Had 2 foster kids, and we were homeschooled.
And you were homeschooled. You thought your life was busy.
No doubt. I always blame Sabrina, like, hey, we're too busy. Well, Mom always blames me for being too busy. Look what you guys did.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole different learning curve with trying to juggle all that and then pastor a church, especially having no schooling to pastor, aside from just watching your dad. No formal schooling anyways. And just up until Linwood, did you at least guest preach at Grandpa's church? Or
I might have.
How do you even know where to start?
I might have, if he asked me. I don't really remember, but he did want to ordain me, and he did ordain me.
So he had seen enough change in your life.
And I wouldn't have been ordained, but he asked me, would you like to be ordained?
Did you have to be ordained to be the pastor of the church?
No. But he asked me if I would like to be ordained, and I did. That was the furthest thing from my mind, but if God asked me.
Yeah,
I feel like, well, this is the door. So my dad ordained me by laying on the hands on me. His dad ordained him by laying hands on him. And his dad was ordained by a Methodist minister who was ordained Methodist minister who went back to John Wesley.
Long chain.
To be a ordained minister, you had to be ordained by a previous ordained minister, which was ordained somehow, somewhere.
Yeah, by an ordained minister.
By John Wesley.
So it trickled all the way down to the original OG, so to speak.
Of that particular line.
So were you ordained before you took the church at Linwood or after?
That one can't remember. I can't remember that.
And was Mom, as kids, I don't remember the chaos and everything of it. But was Mom just along for the journey? Was she just supportive of it? Was she ever question?
She knows she got a missionary calling to become a nurse.
From Bahamas.
From Bahamas.
To be a missionary nurse. And that was...
And so God really used her then to catapult us to the next stages. For that.
Yeah.
And everything started focusing around that, her nursing and her in that situation.
Gotcha. Whew. There's a lot there.
There's a lot there.
Yeah. So let's
many of these actually could be miracle stories if you just seen the actual hand of God did this and did that and did this. I didn't do it. God did it. Mom didn't do it. God did it.
Right.
But he put us in a place where we had to say yes.
Yes. You had to obey. You had to trust.
So like the miracle of Sean being here this morning. God did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not anything else. Well, let's take a break.
Okay.
And then we can pick back up on, because I really want to get into how the whole story unfolded after leaving Linwood, after resigning from law enforcement, after owning the trash company, how God made the next step possible for you as far as God's Bible school and then the mission field.
Right.
Because that's a whole nother.
And there's several miracles in that story.
Yeah.
I mean, it couldn't have been us doing it.
No.
That's the maneuvering of God doing what he did only because we said yes to it when he opened the door is our part. But his part was it already had another door ready to go through,
Many doors at once.
But we had to be faithful to go through what we knew.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's many times, Caleb, I've had to revert back to, I know I'm where God wants me. That's it.
There's a lot of peace in that.
Yeah, and that is my foundation. And even staying at Adam Street, I don't feel comfortable leaving it. That's where God wants me. So wants us.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely as I kind of had my own journey, whatever that next step is,
Mhm.
whether it's a different position at the police department, or something else at home with the kids. It's comforting to know that I'm not in charge.
Mhm.
I'm not in control of all of this. And
Mhm.
as long as I can be obedient and just trust that, put my trust in God, that, that brings me a
Mhm.
significant amount of peace
Mhm.
that a lot of people don't quite understand, I don't think, or have for
Mhm.
sure. Um, so
Well,
there's something to say with that. Isaiah 9:6. What stands out to me the most is he's the Prince of Peace,
mhm.
and he wants us to live in peace and to have peace in our lives. How do we gain peace? Well, it's through trusting and obeying.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
how we get there,
Mhm.
and that's ultimately been the desire of my heart from um, being part of your faith journey as well, because
Mhm.
I've seen that. Because you don't just pack up and leave and take your family to Bahamas. You don't just
Right.
start a second career. You don't go back to school at however old you were.
I was 36.
All right. You don't go off to the mission field and travel, or you don't do that.
38. Sorry.
You don't do that without God's
Yeah.
peace in your life. You
Yeah.
can't.
You don't do it without leadership.
Right. You
Yeah.
can't do that without that fundamental
Mhm.
truth that we just trust and obey what
Mhm.
God has to say. So yeah, so we'll take a break
Okay.
and we'll see if we want to come back to that today or another day.
That's totally up to you.